Captain Yoonji Kim rubbed her tired eyes and blinked at the blue light of the holographic display floating above her desk. The small quarters aboard the Earth diplomatic vessel Compassion felt even smaller at this late hour. The ship hummed softly. Around her, most of the crew already asleep as they traveled through deep space. Yoonji had been about to turn in for the night when the message arrived marked urgent. As the ship's xenopsychology specialist, she often received unusual requests. But this one made her sit up straight in her chair. "Computer, play the message again," she said. The face of Admiral Taewon Park appeared in the hologram. His expression was serious, even more than usual. "Captain Kim, we have received a distress call from the Talon Cooperative. They have requested Earth's help with a delicate matter. I am sending this directly to you because of your expertise." The Admiral's face was replaced by images of tall insectoid aliens with iridescent exoskeletons. The Talons were one of the first alien species humans had made contact with 20 years ago. They were known for their advanced technology and precise logical approach to problems. 3 days ago, there was a structural failure at a Talon research outpost on the moon of Hadrix 7, the Admiral continued. A young Talon is trapped in a collapsed chamber. Their engineers have determined that the structure is highly unstable. The hologram showed scans of a strange building with curved, overlapping sections that looked nothing like human architecture. Red highlights indicated areas of structural weakness. Any conventional rescue attempt will result in a complete collapse, killing both the child and any rescuers. The Talons have exhausted all their options. Yoonji leaned forward. Why would they contact Earth about a structural engineering problem? The Talons were far more advanced than humans in that field. The Talon government has developed a neural simulation program based on detailed scans of the site, the Admiral explained. They need a human volunteer to enter the simulation and try different rescue approaches until a solution is found. I need not remind you of the significance of this request. This is the first time the Talons have explicitly asked for human assistance with their technology. Yoonji nodded to herself. The Talons were proud. This request must have been difficult for them. There is one critical detail you must understand, the Admiral said, his voice growing more somber. The simulation is complete in every way. The neural pathways will experience everything as real. If you fail and die in the simulation, your mind will experience that death. The program will then reset and you can try again. But the fear, the pain, it will all be real to you. Yoonji felt a chill run down her spine. The Admiral continued. The Talons cannot use the simulation themselves. Their neural structure is incompatible with the program. Only a human mind can navigate it successfully. The hologram showed a small Talon, perhaps the equivalent of a 5-year-old human child, huddled in the corner of a partially collapsed room. The image made Yoonji's heart ache. We will arrive at the Talon station in 10 hours. I need a volunteer by then. Consider carefully, Captain. No one would think less of you for declining. The message ended. Yoonji sat in silence for a long moment thinking about what she had just heard. Her hand moved to the communicator on her desk. Captain Kim to Admiral Park. The response came quickly. Park here. Have you made your decision already, Captain? Yes, sir. I volunteer. There was a pause. Are you certain? The risks? I understand the risks, sir. I am the best qualified person aboard. My xenopsychology training will help me communicate with the child, and my background in emergency response gives me a good foundation. Very well, Captain. Report to the medical bay for preparation. The medical team will need to run some tests before we arrive. Yes, sir. Kim out. Yoonji stood and looked around her small quarters. She opened her desk drawer and took out a small wooden box. Inside was a simple bracelet made of braided leather. Her daughter had made it for her before she left Earth. Hana was now 14, living with her father while Yoonji served on this 5-year diplomatic mission. She slipped the bracelet on and headed for the medical bay. 6 hours later, Dr. Jun-Ho Lee shook his head as he reviewed Yoonji's test results. Your neural patterns are strong, but this simulation is unlike anything we've encountered before. The Talon technology is far more advanced than ours. Yoonji sat on the edge of the examination table. Will it work with my brain? Yes, but that's what worries me. It will work too well. Your mind won't be able to tell the difference between the simulation and reality. Each death you experience will feel completely real. How many times can I safely enter the simulation? She asked. The doctor looked uncomfortable. The Talons say there is no physical limit. Your body will be safe, but psychologically... He trailed off. No human has ever experienced death more than once or twice in a simulation this real. The psychological trauma could be severe. Yoonji nodded slowly. I understand, but that child has been trapped for days now. How much longer can they survive? The Talons say the environmental systems in that section are still functioning. The child has enough air and water, but they don't know how long the structure will hold. A voice came over the ship's communication system. All senior officers to the bridge. We are approaching the Talon station. Yoonji stood up. Thank you, Doctor. I should go. The doctor caught her arm. Captain, please reconsider. We could send the simulation data back to Earth. Get a team of experts to analyze it. There's no time, Yoonji said gently. Every hour matters now. The Talon station hung in space like a complex geometric sculpture. Unlike the sleek practical designs of human ships, Talon architecture embraced both function and artistic expression. The Compassion docked at one of the extending arms of the station. Admiral Park led the small delegation that boarded the station. Yoonji walked beside him, together with Dr. Lee and 2 other officers. A group of Talons waited for them in the docking area. The tallest Talon stepped forward. I am Chief Scientist Renek. Thank you for coming. The translator in Yoonji's ear converted the clicks and chirps of the Talon language into smooth English. Admiral Park bowed slightly. We are honored to assist. This is Captain Yoonji Kim, who has volunteered for the simulation. The Talon's compound eyes studied Yoonji. Your courage honors your species, Captain. Please follow me. They walked through curved corridors that seemed to flow like water frozen in time. Yoonji had visited Talon ships before, but never a station of this size. Despite the beauty of the architecture, she could feel the tense atmosphere. The chief scientist led them to a large chamber. In the center was a reclined chair surrounded by delicate machinery. It looked almost like an artwork rather than a piece of technology. This is the neural interface, Renek explained. It will connect your mind to the simulation. The program contains all data we have about the collapsed section and the child. Yoonji approached the chair. How exactly does it work? The system will create a perfect neural link. Your mind will believe you are in the collapsed section. You will be able to see, hear, touch, and interact with everything as if you were really there. When you find a solution that works, we will implement it in reality. And if I fail? Yoonji asked. The simulation will end, and you will experience the ending. Then it will reset, and you can try again with the knowledge you gained. Each attempt builds on the previous ones. Yoonji took a deep breath. I'm ready to begin. Admiral Park put a hand on her shoulder. You don't have to do this, Captain. She looked at him with determination in her eyes. Yes, I do, sir. That's why we're out here, isn't it? To help when we can. The Admiral nodded slowly. Very well. Good luck, Captain. Yoonji sat in the chair. It adjusted to fit her body perfectly. The Talon scientist moved around her, making final preparations. The child's name is Lin, Renek said. Lin has been trapped for 3 days now. We speak to them through the communication system, but we cannot reach them. Yoonji closed her eyes as the neural interface activated. I'll get Lin out, she promised. No matter how many tries it takes. The last thing she heard was Dr. Lee's worried voice. Then the simulation began, and Captain Yoonji Kim found herself standing in a corridor that seemed about to collapse at any moment. The simulation was perfect in every detail. Yoonji stood in a curved corridor that leaned at an unnatural angle. The walls, made of something like polished stone but with a slight give to them, reflected a soft blue emergency light. The air tasted stale in her envirosuit, recycled too many times. A warning light flashed on her helmet display. The atmospheric sensors showed dangerous levels of methane outside her suit. The talons could breathe it comfortably, but for humans, it was deadly. Yoon-ji took careful steps forward, testing the floor with each movement. She had been briefed on the layout of the research facility, but maps could not prepare her for the reality of the damaged structure. Cracks ran along the walls like lightning frozen in place. Small pieces of debris crunched under her boots. As she rounded a corner, she saw the collapsed entrance to the chamber where the child was trapped. A large support beam had fallen across the doorway, and parts of the ceiling had come down around it. Through a small gap, she could see movement. Inside, "Hello, Lin?" she called out, using the translation feature in her suit. A small sound came back, something between a chirp and a click. Then a voice, high-pitched and clearly frightened. "Who are you?" "Not Talon. My name is Yoon-ji. I'm human. I'm here to help." "You?" There was a pause. "Human? From Earth?" "Yes. I'm going to get you out. Are you hurt?" "No." "Scared?" Yoon-ji moved closer to examine the blockage. Her suit's scanner showed the structural damage extended deep into the walls. This entire section was ready to come apart. "I'm going to try to move this beam," she told Lin. "Stay back from the doorway." She planted her feet firmly and activated the strength enhancers in her suit. The servos whined as she gripped the beam and began to lift. At first it moved easily. Too easily. Yoon-ji realized her mistake as she heard a grinding sound above her. The beam had been supporting more weight than she thought. As she shifted, something gave way in the ceiling. She had just enough time to think, this was a bad idea, before several tons of Talon architecture came crashing down on top of her. The pain was intense but mercifully brief. Yoon-ji gasped as her eyes flew open. She was back in the chair on the Talon station, her body intact but her heart racing. "First attempt completed," a Talon voice announced. "Simulation reset ready." Dr. Lee appeared at her side, checking her vital signs. "Captain, are you all right?" "I'm fine," she said, though her hands trembled slightly. The memory of being crushed was vivid, the pain still echoing in her nerves even though her body was unharmed. "Your heart rate and stress hormones are elevated," the doctor said quietly. "That was just one death. You don't have to continue." Yoon-ji shook her head. "I just need a minute." She looked up at Chief Scientist Renek. That beam was a key support. Moving it triggered the collapse. The Talon made a gesture of agreement. "Yes. That is one approach our engineers tried in their calculations. Now you understand why normal rescue methods will not work?" Yoon-ji took a deep breath. "I'm ready to go back in." Her second attempt was more careful. Instead of moving the beam, she tried to create a new opening by cutting through the wall beside the door. The Talon architecture was strange to her, seemingly solid but with an internal structure unlike anything humans built. Her cutting tool made good progress at first. Then it hit something that sparked. There was a sudden hiss, and warning lights flashed across her helmet display. "What's happening?" Lin called from inside. "Stay back," Yoon-ji warned, but it was too late. The cutting had breached some kind of pressurized system. The pressure difference caused an explosive decompression. The wall gave way, and the air rushed out violently, pulling both Yoon-ji and Lin into the vacuum of the station's exterior. Death by vacuum was not quick and not painless. The third time, Yoon-ji tried a different approach. She used her scanner to map the structural weak points first. There appeared to be a path through the debris if she could shift just the right pieces in the right order. She made it further this time, clearing enough space to see Lin clearly. The young Talon was smaller than the adults Yoon-ji had met, with a lighter-colored exoskeleton that hadn't fully hardened yet. Large compound eyes looked at her with a mixture of fear and hope. "I can see you now," Yoon-ji said gently. "I'm going to get you out." The others tried. "They couldn't," Lin said. "I can try again and again until I get it right," Yoon-ji assured her. She carefully moved a final piece of debris. For a moment, it seemed like it would work. Then there was a low groan from deep within the walls. The piece she had moved was apparently connected to something important. The floor beneath Lin suddenly gave way. Yoon-ji lunged forward, grabbing for the child. Their fingers touched for just an instant before Lin fell into the darkness below. a high-pitched scream fading away. Yoonji had just enough time to feel the horror of failure before the rest of the chamber collapsed on top of her. By the 7th attempt, Yoonji was getting used to dying. Each death was different, crushed, suffocated, impaled by flying debris, but the fear was becoming familiar, almost expected. The Talon scientists watched her brain scans with growing concern. Most volunteers in their previous simpler simulations had quit after 3 or 4 deaths. No one had endured this many failures in such a realistic setting. Dr. Lee tried again to convince her to take a longer break. Your mind isn't designed for this kind of trauma, Captain. Repeated death experiences can cause lasting psychological damage. I'm getting closer, Yoonji insisted. Each time I learn more about the structure. Admiral Park had been monitoring her progress. Captain, I order you to rest for at least 6 hours before attempting again. Yoonji wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. Her judgment was beginning to suffer. Very well, sir. 6 hours. During her rest period, Yoonji reviewed the data from her previous attempts. She had the Talon scientists explain more about their building techniques and materials. The more she learned, the more she realized how different their approach to construction was from human methods. Your buildings are almost alive, she said to Renek. They respond to stress in ways I wouldn't expect. Yes, the chief scientist agreed. Our structures distribute force through the entire system. When one part fails, the others compensate. But in this case, the damage was too extensive for the system to stabilize. Yoonji nodded. That's why simple solutions fail. I need to think like the building does. When her 6 hours were up, she returned to the simulation chair with new determination. I need to talk more with Lin this time, she told the scientists. The child might have information that could help. Her 8th attempt began like the others. This time, instead of immediately trying to clear a path, Yoonji focused on communicating with Lin. Can you tell me exactly what happened when the room collapsed? She asked through the small opening. Lin's voice trembled as the young Talon recounted the experience. I was studying the old technology. Then the ground shook. Teacher told me to stay still. They went to get help, then more shaking. The door got blocked. The old technology? What were you studying? Ancient control panels. From before we went to space. They still work. This was new information. Yoonji's scanner suddenly picked up power readings she hadn't noticed before. There was active technology in the room with Lin. Is there a panel near you that's still turned on? She asked. Yes. It has blue lights. Can you describe the symbols on it? Before Lin could answer, a new tremor shook the corridor. Yoonji braced herself, but the vibration caused a section of ceiling to break free. She jumped back, but wasn't quick enough. A sharp piece of debris pierced her suit and then her chest. As she felt her lung collapse and blood fill her throat, Yoonji made a mental note. Ancient technology. Still active. Power source. It was another piece of the puzzle bought with another death. When Yoonji awoke in the chair after her 8th death, she immediately began speaking. The room has active technology. Old systems that might be connected to the building's infrastructure. We need to know more about what the child was studying. The Talon scientists looked at each other in surprise. This was information they hadn't known. We will update the simulation with this insight, Renek said. Are you ready to continue? Yoonji nodded, ignoring the look of concern from Dr. Lee. Each death was terrible, but each also brought her closer to saving Lin. The real Lin, not just the simulation. I'm ready, she said. Let's try again. By her 15th attempt, Yoonji had developed a routine. Enter the simulation, call out to Lin, gather new information, die, wake up, report her findings, and go back in. Each cycle brought more knowledge, but also more strain. Dr. Lee had started giving her medication to help manage the psychological impact of repeated deaths. It dulled the emotional response but did nothing for the physical memory of pain. Yoonji now knew what it felt like to be crushed, suffocated, impaled, burned, and torn apart. Her dreams, during the short rest periods she allowed herself, were filled with these sensations. Still, she persisted. "You're making progress," Admiral Park told her between the 15th and 16th attempts. "The Talon engineers say your information has eliminated 80% of the possible approaches. We're getting closer." Yunji nodded tiredly. "Lin is recognizing me now. The simulation is learning my patterns." That was another strange aspect of the experience. The artificial intelligence controlling the simulation was adapting. Each time Hunji entered, Lin seemed to remember more of their previous interactions, even though each reset was supposed to be a fresh start. "You came back again," Lin said when Unji entered for the 16th time. "I promised I would," Yunji replied, working to clear a small viewing hole in the debris. "I'm going to keep trying until I get you out." This time, she wanted to learn more about the ancient technology in the room with Lin. "Can you tell me about the control panel you were studying? The one with blue lights?" Lin moved closer to a section of the wall that housed what looked like a primitive console. "Teacher says it controlled the building systems before we had AI. It still works because it has its own power." Yunji scanned the panel through the small opening. "Can you press the button that looks like a circle with 3 lines through it?" Lin reached out one thin limb and touched the symbol. There was a low hum, and Yunji's scanner showed a power surge somewhere deep in the walls. "What does that control?" she asked. "Teacher says it regulates pressure in the fluid channels." Fluid channels. That was new information. Yunji remembered, seeing something like pipes running through the walls in her earlier attempts. She had assumed they were for ventilation or communication. But what if they were part of a hydraulic system that helped support the structure? "Lin, can you see any?" Her question was cut short as the button Lin had pressed caused a chain reaction. One of the weakened walls suddenly bulged and burst. A stream of thick, greenish fluid shot out at high pressure, hitting Yunji directly. Her suit's external sensors went wild as the fluid began to dissolve the protective material. Death by corrosive fluid was a new one. It was not pleasant. "Fluid channels in the walls," Yunji reported immediately after waking from her 16th death. "They contain some kind of pressurized liquid that supports the structure, but is highly corrosive to my suit materials." Chief Scientist Renek made a gesture of understanding. "Yes, our older buildings used a circulatory system of supporting fluids. This is an ancient outpost, built before we developed our current methods." "Why wasn't this in the briefing?" "Admiral," Park demanded. "We did not realize this system was still active," Renek admitted. "The child has discovered something our survey teams missed." Yunji rubbed her arms, still feeling the phantom burn of the corrosive fluid. "I need to know more about these fluid channels. If they're part of the building's support system, they might be the key to creating a safe passage." Dr. Lee checked her vital signs with a frown. "Your stress markers are reaching dangerous levels, Captain. Your mind can't keep processing these trauma responses indefinitely." "I'm fine," Yunji insisted, though the tremor in her hand suggested otherwise. "You need real rest," the doctor said. "Not just an hour or 2. A full sleep cycle at minimum." Admiral Park nodded in agreement. "That's an order, Captain. 8 hours of rest." Yunji wanted to argue but knew they were right. Her judgment was becoming impaired. "Very well, but first I want to speak with the Talon engineers about these fluid channels." During her rest period, Yunji dreamed of Lin. Not the simulated version, but the real child trapped in the collapsed chamber. In the dream, she reached out to touch the young Talon's hand, only to have the floor give way between them. She woke up in a cold sweat, the feeling of falling still vivid in her mind. She had slept for nearly 10 hours. Her body needed it, though her mind still felt fragile. The repeated trauma had left marks that no amount of rest could quickly erase. After a meal and a medical check, she met with the Talon engineers. They had provided detailed schematics of the fluid channel system based on her discoveries. The ancient technology used a network of pressurized tubes to distribute weight and provide structural support. When part of the system failed, the pressure would automatically reroute to maintain stability. That's why my earlier attempts failed, Yunji realized. Each time I moved something, the pressure shifted to another part of the structure, causing new failures. "Correct," one of the engineers confirmed. "The system is trying to compensate, but the damage is too extensive." It is like a wounded body that cannot heal itself. Yunji studied the schematics carefully. If I could control the pressure distribution, using the ancient control panel, I might be able to create a stable path. Theoretically possible, the engineer agreed, but extremely difficult. The timing would need to be perfect. Then I'll keep practicing until I get it right, Yunji said simply. Her 23rd attempt began with a new approach. Instead of trying to clear a path through the debris, Yunji focused on reaching the control panel inside the room. Lin, she called through the small opening. I need you to be my hands. I'm going to tell you which buttons to press and when. The young Talon moved to the panel. I will help. Good. First, the circle with 3 lines. Press it and hold for 3 seconds, then release. Lin did as instructed. Yunji's scanner showed the pressure in the nearby fluid channels decreasing. Now the square with 2 dots. Another pressure change. The debris shifted slightly, opening the gap a bit wider. It's working, Yunji said with growing excitement. Now She never finished the sentence. A support beam above her that had been held in place by the fluid pressure suddenly came free. Yunji had just enough time to push herself away from the opening, ensuring the beam wouldn't fall into the room with Lin. It caught her across the legs instead, pinning her to the floor. The pain was immediate and intense. She knew from the scanner readings that the pressure was building up in other parts of the system. The entire corridor would collapse soon. Lin, she called out, fighting through the pain. Remember the pattern. Circle with 3 lines, hold for 3 seconds, then square with 2 dots. Then, the ceiling came down in sections, and darkness followed. By her 30th attempt, Yunji had mapped out most of the fluid channel system. She now understood how the pressure distributed throughout the structure and how the ancient control panel could manipulate it. What she hadn't yet figured out was how to create a stable path that would last long enough for Lin to escape. Each sequence of pressure adjustments would temporarily open a path, but then the system would compensate, causing new collapses. The Talon scientists were amazed by her persistence. Most of their own people would have given up after a few failures, accepting that the problem had no solution. But Yunji kept trying, death after death. You humans are remarkably stubborn, Chief Scientist Renek observed. We call it determination. Admiral Park corrected. Whatever it was called, it was taking a toll. Dr. Lee reported that Yunji's brain scans showed patterns consistent with post-traumatic stress. The medication could only do so much to manage the psychological impact of repeated deaths. Still, when asked if she wanted to stop, Yunji's answer never changed. Lin is waiting for me, she would say, and back into the simulation she would go. By the 35th attempt, the simulation version of Lin had begun to recognize her immediately. You came back again, the young Talon would say. You always come back. I promised I would, Yunji would reply. And I keep my promises. What had started as a rescue mission had become something more personal. Yunji was no longer just trying to solve a technical problem. She was fighting for Lin, a child who had come to trust her, even if it was just a simulation of the real child. And with each death, with each new piece of knowledge gained, she was getting closer to the solution that would save them both. On her 47th attempt, Yunji had identified 16 possible approaches to save Lin. 15 had killed her in various ways. The 16th remained untested, but required precise timing and a deeper understanding of Talon physiology than she possessed. After nearly collapsing from exhaustion following her latest death, Dr. Lee had insisted on a full day of rest. Yunji spent most of it reviewing everything she had learned about Talon construction and biology. There must be something I'm missing, she muttered, studying the holographic models the Talon engineers had provided. Admiral Park visited her in the small room that had become her temporary quarters on the Talon station. Captain, we've been here for 8 days. The rescue teams are standing by, but they need a solution soon. Yunji looked up from her studies. How is the real Lin doing? Holding on. The environmental systems in the chamber are still functioning, but food supplies are limited. She nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. The simulation was difficult enough, but somewhere in the real station, a real child was trapped and counting on her. I think I'm close, she said. This next approach might work. The fluid channel system can be temporarily stabilized if the pressure is released in a specific sequence. The problem is creating a passage large enough for Lynn to get through before the system compensates and collapses again. The Admiral studied her face. The dark circles under her eyes and the slight tremor in her hands told of the toll this mission was taking. Dr. Lee says you've experienced 47 deaths in the simulation. That's more psychological trauma than anyone should endure. I can handle it, Yoonji insisted. I know you can. That's what worries me. The Admiral sighed. The Talons have offered to end the mission. They say they've learned enough from your attempts to conclude that there is no viable solution. Yoonji straightened in her chair. They're wrong. There is a way. I just haven't found it yet. Captain, Yoonji, no one would think less of you if you agreed with their assessment. She shook her head firmly. I made a promise to Lynn. I said I would keep coming back until I got her out. I don't break my promises. The Admiral recognized the determination in her voice. Very well. What do you need for your next attempt? More information about young Talon physiology, specifically their flexibility and size constraints. Chief Scientist Renek provided detailed information about Talon physical development. Our young have not yet developed full exoskeletal rigidity, he explained. They retain some of the flexibility of their early stages. How flexible exactly, Yoonji asked. Could a child Lin's age fold their limbs in ways an adult could not? The Talon made a gesture that Yoonji had learned to interpret as affirmation. Yes, quite significantly. It is similar to how human children have more flexible bones than adults. This was the missing piece Yoonji had been searching for. Her 16th approach depended on creating a passage that might be too small for an adult Talon, but could be just large enough for a flexible child. I'm ready to try again, she told the medical team. Dr. Lee checked her vitals one last time. Your brain is showing signs of significant stress. These repeated trauma experiences are causing changes to your neural patterns. Will they affect my ability to complete the mission? No, but the long-term effects, then they don't matter right now, Yoonji said, settling into the simulation chair. Lynn matters. The 48th simulation began like all the others. The damaged corridor, the blocked entrance, Lynn's voice calling from inside the chamber, but this time Yoonji had a new plan. Lynn, I need to know something important, she said through the small opening. Can you fold your body very small, like when you were newly hatched? The young Talon made a sound that Yoonji had come to recognize as consideration. Yes, we practice folding for emergency drills. Good, that's very good. Yoonji began carefully examining the fluid channel access panel in the corridor wall. In previous attempts, she had discovered that these panels connected directly to the main system. I'm going to create a path for you, she explained to Lynn. But it will be very small and you'll need to fold yourself as tightly as possible. I understand, Lynn replied. Will you come too? Yoonji hesitated. I'll try. She knew it was a lie. Her plan would create an opening just large enough for the child, but not for an adult human in an envirosuit. Someone would need to stay behind to maintain the pressure balance in the fluid channels while Lynn escaped. That someone would be her. Working carefully, Yoonji removed the access panel and studied the complex network of tubes and control mechanisms inside. Her previous deaths had taught her exactly which connections to modify and in what sequence. Lynn, I need you to go to the control panel in your room. We're going to work together. The young Talon moved to the ancient panel. I'm ready. Press the circle with 3 lines and hold it for exactly 5 seconds. As Lynn did this, Yoonji quickly rerouted one of the fluid lines in the access panel. The pressure began to drop in the section of wall near the blocked entrance. Now the triangle with the dot in the center, 2 quick presses. Another fluid line rerouted. The debris shifted slightly. For the next 10 minutes, Yoonji guided Lynn through a precise sequence of commands, while she manually adjusted the fluid pressure system from her end. Gradually, the blocked entrance began to change shape as the pressure distribution throughout the structure shifted, Pieces of debris moved aside, not falling but sliding along invisible pressure gradients. A small opening began to form, not where the door had been, but lower, near the floor. "I can see a way out," Lin called excitedly. "Not yet," Yunji cautioned. "The pressure is still unstable. We need to complete the sequence. 3 more adjustments." The opening grew slightly larger, now about the size of a small window. Yunji's scanner showed that the pressure in the surrounding fluid channels was building to dangerous levels. The system was trying to compensate for her manipulations. Lin pressed the square with 2 dots, then immediately the circle with the line through it. As the young Talon did so, Yunji made her final adjustment to the access panel. The opening stabilized, no longer growing but no longer in danger of collapsing. "Now, Lin, you need to fold yourself as small as possible and come through that opening. Quickly." "What about you?" Lin asked. Yunji looked at her scanner. The pressure was building faster now. Once Lin moved through the opening, the delicate balance would be disrupted. The entire section would collapse within seconds. "I'll be right behind." "You," she lied. "Go now." Lin approached the opening, body already beginning to fold in ways that would be impossible for an adult. Limbs tucked in, joints bending at extreme angles. The young Talon looked almost like a ball with eyes. "Like this?" "Perfect," Yunji encouraged. "Now through the opening. Don't stop for anything." Lin began to squeeze through the small gap. It was tight, even with the child's remarkable flexibility. For a moment, Yunji feared her calculations had been wrong, that the opening was still too small. Then Lin's body compressed just a bit more, and the young Talon slipped through. "I made it!" Lin called from the other side. Yunji smiled in relief. "Good. Now run down the corridor to the right. Don't stop until you reach the green lights. There will be other Talons waiting there. But you're coming too, right?" The scanner in Unji's hand was flashing warning signals. The pressure in the fluid channels was reaching critical levels. The structure around her groaned. "I'll be right. Behind you," she said. "Go now. Run." She heard Lin's footsteps retreating down the corridor. The young Talon was safe. Mission accomplished. Yunji turned her attention to the access panel. There was a small chance she could rebalance the pressure enough to create an escape path for herself. Her fingers moved quickly, rerouting fluid lines, trying to recreate the delicate balance she had achieved moments before. For a brief instant, she thought it might work. The pressure began to stabilize. Then a connection broke under the strain, spraying corrosive fluid across her hands. The pain was immediate and intense. The structure around her gave a final groan. Yunji closed her eyes as the ceiling came down. Death, number 48. But this time it came with the knowledge that Lin had escaped. It was worth it. Yunji woke slowly. Her body felt heavy as if gravity had increased. For a moment, disorientation clouded her mind. Was this another simulation reset? Was she about to die again? Then she recognized the soft blue lighting of the Talon Medical facility, not the harsh emergency lights of the collapsed corridor. She was back in reality. Dr. Lee appeared at her side, medical scanner in hand. "Welcome back, Captain. How do you feel?" Yunji tried to sit up, but her limbs felt weak. "Did it work? Did they get Lin out?" The doctor gently pushed her back down. "Stay still. Your body needs time to recover. You've been in the simulation for nearly 10 days. But Lin, the rescue team received your solution and implemented it immediately. They successfully extracted the child 4 hours ago." Relief washed over Yunji, so powerful it brought tears to her eyes. "It worked," she whispered. "Yes. Your final approach was perfect. The Talon engineers made some minor adjustments for the real-world conditions, but the core strategy was exactly as you designed it." Yunji closed her eyes, letting the knowledge sink in. 48 deaths, 48 experiences of pain and fear. But they had been worth it. Lin was safe. "The Admiral wants to see you when you're ready," Dr. Lee said. "And the Talon leadership has requested a formal meeting to express their gratitude." "I'd like to see Lin first," Yunji said. "The real Lin." Of course, but first, we need to discuss your condition. The doctor's expression grew serious. Your brain has undergone significant stress. The repeated trauma experiences have left neural patterns that will take time to heal. Will I recover? Yes, but it will take time. You may experience flashbacks, nightmares, possibly panic attacks, when faced with situations that remind you of your deaths in the simulation. Yoonji nodded. She had expected as much. Already she could feel the echo of memories, being crushed, suffocated, torn apart, lurking at the edges of her consciousness. It was worth it, she said simply. Dr. Lee smiled slightly. The Talons seem to think so. I've never seen them so impressed by a human before. 3 days passed before Yoonji was strong enough to leave the medical facility. Her body had been in the simulation chair for so long that her muscles had weakened, despite the medical team's best efforts. She now walked with a slight limp, leaning on a support cane. Admiral Park met her in the corridor outside her quarters. Captain Kim, it's good to see you on your feet. Thank you, sir. Yoonji straightened as much as she could, trying to appear more recovered than she felt. The Talon High Council has requested your presence at a formal ceremony tomorrow. They wish to honor your contribution. I was just doing my job, sir. The Admiral shook his head. What you did goes far beyond duty, Captain. 48 deaths in the simulation. No one has ever endured anything like that before. Yoonji looked down at her hands. Sometimes she could still feel the phantom pain of the corrosive fluid burning through her skin on that final attempt. When can I see Lin? She asked. The child has been asking for you as well. The family has invited you to visit them today, before the formal ceremony. The Talon residential section of the station was different from the areas Yoonji had seen before. The architecture was softer here, with curved walls and warm lighting that shifted colors subtly. It reminded her of coral formations on Earth. Chief, Scientist Renek accompanied her to Lin's family unit. The child has spoken of nothing but you since the rescue, he told her. Your actions have made quite an impression. I only did what anyone would do, Yoonji said. No, Renek corrected. Not anyone. Not even among your own species. The willingness to endure repeated death experiences for a child not of your kind. This is exceptional. They reached a doorway that irised open at their approach. Inside, a family group of Talons waited. Yoonji recognized the adult forms similar to the scientists she had worked with. And there, standing slightly in front of the others, was a small figure. Lin. The young Talon looked different from the simulation version. The exoskeleton was a deeper blue, with patterns that the simulation hadn't captured perfectly. But the large compound eyes were the same, staring at Yoonji with what she had learned to recognize as wonder. You are the human, Lin said in carefully practiced English. The one who saved me. Yoonji smiled, leaning on her cane. Yes, my name is Yoonji. I know. They told me what you did. How many times you died in the simulation to find a way to save me. One of the adult Talons, a parent, Yoonji assumed, stepped forward. We cannot express our gratitude adequately. Our child is alive because of your sacrifice. It wasn't really sacrifice, Yoonji said. I'm still here. But you suffered, the parent said. Your mind experienced true death many times. For a stranger. For a child not of your species. Lin moved closer, studying Yoonji with curious eyes. Why did you do it? Why did you keep trying after dying so many times? Yoonji knelt down carefully, using the cane for support so she could be at eye level with the child. Because every child deserves to be saved, no matter what species they are, no matter what it costs. Lin made a soft clicking sound that Yoonji had learned was the Talon equivalent of emotional acknowledgement. Then, to everyone's surprise, the young Talon extended a limb and gently touched Yoonji's hand. It was a significant gesture. Talons rarely initiated physical contact, especially with other species. Thank you for not giving up on me, Lin said softly. Yoonji felt tears forming in her eyes. I made a promise. I always keep my promises. The formal ceremony the next day was held in the largest chamber of the Talon station. Representatives from several species were present, including a delegation from Earth. Yunji stood as straight as she could despite her lingering weakness, wearing her full dress uniform. The Talon ambassador approached the central platform. Today, we honor Captain Yunji Kim of Earth, who has demonstrated the highest ideals of sentient beings. The ambassador turned to address Yunji directly. Captain Kim, you entered our neural simulation 64 times. You experienced death in 48 of those attempts. Each time you returned driven by the sole purpose of saving a child you had never met, of a species not your own. A murmur went through the assembled crowd. Such dedication transcends normal duty. It speaks to something deeper, something that binds all sentient life together. The care for our young, the willingness to sacrifice for the future. The ambassador made a formal gesture of highest respect. The Talon Cooperative hereby recognizes you as kin protector, a title never before granted to a non-Talon. Your name will be recorded in our ancestral memory, to be remembered for all generations. Yunji bowed her head in acknowledgement, feeling slightly overwhelmed by the ceremony. Would you like to address the gathering? The ambassador asked. Yunji stepped forward, leaning on her cane. She looked out at the assembled beings, her eyes finding Lin and the child's family in the front row. I am honored by this recognition, she began. But what I did is not unique to me, or even to humans. It is what any of us should do when a child is in danger. She paused, memories of her many deaths flickering through her mind. In the simulation, I died many times. But each death taught me something new. Each failure brought me one step closer to success. Sometimes that is what protecting our future requires, the willingness to fail, to suffer, to die if necessary, but never to give up. Yunji looked directly at Lin. Some things are worth dying for, even 64 times. The young Talon made the gesture of highest respect in return, small limbs perfectly mimicking the formal movements. Later, as the ceremony concluded, and the Taura gathered beings began to disperse, Admiral Park approached Unji. The Earth government has approved an extended medical leave for you, Captain. You've more than earned it. Thank you, sir. But I'd like to return to duty as soon as Dr. Lee clears me. The Admiral studied her face. The psychological effects of what you experienced will take time to process. There's no rush. Yunji smiled slightly. With respect, sir, I didn't endure 48 deaths just to sit at home afterward. There's still work to be done out here. Admiral Park nodded, recognizing the determination that had carried her through her ordeal. Very well, Captain. The compassion will be ready when you are. As they walked toward the Earth section of the station, Yunji glanced back. Lin stood with the family, watching her go. The young Talon raised a limb in farewell. Yunji raised her hand in return. The nightmares would come, she knew. The memories of pain and fear would linger. But when they did, she would remember this moment. The sight of a child, alive and safe, because she had refused to give up. It had been worth every death.